And so you saw an entire generation vote in the savior, Barack Obama. And now you've seen more overwhelming control from the Democrat Party, where they control everything from your future prospects, affirmative action, DEI, to your language, hate speech laws. And so young people now are not saying, hey, what happens if I vote in the cool Democrats? They're going, I've lived under it.
Yeah.
And I have less freedom than my parents. Democrats are really trying to knock this next one out of the park with young men.
Nice.
Democrats, they're desperate to win over young men, and they are willing to spend many, many, many millions of dollars to do it. Here's the thing. In this last election, and I've told you this, you can go back to me when I was 22, 23, saying, look, young people tend to become more conservative as they grow older, as they have families, as they pay taxes, as they sort of accrue more responsibilities. But if you could just mitigate your losses with people under the age of 35 to 10% and kept everything else the same, you'd never lose another election again. I didn't expect people to begin voting, as far as a majority, Republican under the age of 30. I thought they would become more conservative. I didn't think that you would see that big of a switch.
Yeah.
And comment if you're a millennial like me, everything was liberal by default, right? You had baby boom generation, they were hippies and they became more conservative. Gen X was still obviously more liberal, probably split kind of down the middle. Millennials, everything was Bush is a Nazi. Of course, Barack Obama, he's this transcendent political hero. I thought, all right, well, that's just something you're not going to win back until these people start paying taxes and move up in the corporate world. I didn't know just how bad the consequences were for Democrats with Gen Z men browbeating them, guilting them, demanding they check their privilege while creating an economy that is entirely unsustainable for them with no prospects of future. And here's the thing, too. It also tells you when you look at this, young men voting overwhelmingly conservative, certainly young Hispanic men, it means that free stuff isn't working.
Yeah.
Forgiving your student loans, that's not enough. Rent forgiveness, that's a really good thing because that means that you have a generation of people who've it's effectively white noise. Legacy media doesn't matter to them at all. At all. Neither does the power of Hollywood. Just look at Taylor Swift and beyond, look at their followership, and it still didn't move the needle. If anything, it went the other way with young men. And the question to millennials, if you're surprised by this, and then young Gen Z men, please comment below when you became conservative and why. There are a lot of reasons. A lot of people are studying this, psychologists, sociologists. I think there's some rebellion aspect, but I also just think, look, people are looking at the state of the country saying, yeah, Democrats have never delivered on the lie that they promised. And so now the Democrats are actually putting together a plan and spending tens of millions of dollars to try and win back young voters. Think of that phrase. And just listen to this broadcaster talk about it, who looks exactly like a Pekingese. You can see, yeah, here you go. Watch her.
The midterms fast approaching and a full 6 months after November's electoral drubbing, the Democratic Party appears to still be in fact-finding mode. The New York Times reports that party donors and strategists have been gathering at luxury hotels to discuss how to win back working-class voters. And they're spending $20 million on an effort to try to figure out how to speak to young men.
Yeah, so the New York Times has labeled this plan, or at least this is how they describe it, SAM, speaking to American men. SAM. Think about that for a second. It should just be, you should only be speaking to American men and women. You shouldn't have to, that's not a niche group. That's not, okay, hey, let's look at this demographic of Americans. Wait, hold on a second. You mean you're a party? You're an American political party?
Yeah.
And now you have to figure out how to speak to Americans, which means what? They were speaking largely to non-Americans trying to buy a voting block.
Well, they tried speaking to immigrant male people.
Yes.
Simp.
Yes.
But it wasn't working.
It did not work at all. So SAM is going to cost $20 million, and it, quote, promises investment to study the syntax, language, and content that gains attention and virality in these spaces, meaning young male voters. We speak proper English. I don't know what you mean by this. It's not like it's Ebonics. Study the syntax.
You have to figure out.
Yeah. Part of their studies, by the way, included immediately setting up a tip line. Unfortunately, it didn't help much.
Wait, hi, this is Sam.
That's not helpful at all. So let me give you the reality here. All reference is available. Links in the description. 58% of Gen Z men voted for Trump. In 2020, 56% voted for Biden. And as far as Latino men, 55% voted for Trump. And then there are some other studies that have come out that have shown that over 60% of young Hispanic males are voting for Trump. That is unbelievable. And this also tells you something. First off, 68% of Gen Z men said that the economy was the number one issue. But it also tells you that the illegal immigration issue, it doesn't register for young Hispanic or Latino males in this country. And I don't know how Democrats win them back, because if you are now, let's say, you're second, third generation immigrant, you're here in the United States, okay, you're a young Hispanic male, young Latino male, you're being raised here, there's no promise to you of getting citizenship. You already have it. It also tells you that the left, in promising, for example, to black people reparations, affirmative action, black zones that they talk about, black community reinvestments, none of that is being promised to legal Hispanic males. And so now you have basically people who are not being promised a handout whatsoever because of their race, young Hispanic males. All right. Yeah, then you combine that with traditional values with a lot of these family units and valuing masculinity. I think it's just going to continually lean more and more conservative. Honestly, I mean, to tell young Hispanic males, young Latino males, that they should feel guilty because of patriarchy, like, that's going to be a tough sell. You tried Latinx and they said, go screw yourself. Like, not a single one, not a single one went along with it. You would have to have multiple generations of brainwashing to convince them that the Democratic Party is beneficial to them. And there seems to be quite a bit of a divide with a lot of young Hispanic Latino males and young black Americans. They do not have sympathy for
a long time too
George
to get over, because like I said, it is a culture that, it is enshrined in patriarchy. I mean, it's the guy goes out, works hard for his family. Yep. The whole immigrant thing is you go out, you work hard for your family, send the money back. And you bring them back. Then you get a visa, then you get a citizenship.
And you know what you see when you see young working class, as I said, working class. Okay, working class, meaning contributing, paying taxes, trying to make a life for their family. Mm-hmm. You find Hispanic males, young Latino males, and young white males, there is no racial divide. Isn't that a beautiful thing? In other words, the American spirit of American exceptionalism, the land of opportunity. Hey, you now see, once you're no longer playing divide and conquer, young Hispanic males are basically promised the same thing that young white males are. Nothing. Toil by the sweat of your brow. And what do you see? They vote the exact same, even before.
I'd clump young Asian males into that too, but no one talks about them.
Probably quite a few.
It's not good for their agenda to talk about it.
So here are three reasons I think that Democrats lost young men by wide margins. Okay, here's one is the LGBTQ plus push by Democrats.
Yeah.
First off, we know that doesn't go over well across all generations with the Hispanic male community, but 72% of Gen Z men oppose trans men in women's sports. 72%.
Yeah.
They have fatigue. Well, they have black fatigue is a thing now, as far as Black Lives Matter, as far as reparations, as far as restorative justice, as far as critical race theory, things like toxic masculinity. They're tired of hearing this. They're tired of being condemned for immutable characteristics over which they have no control. And the Democrat Party just doesn't seem to be able to remove their foot from their own dick because they keep pushing LGBTQ themes across the board when Gen Z men have said, stop it!
I also marched for equality. I like to think I've been defending freedom from an early age.
Are we topless at the White House?
We are joined by Dr. Rachel Levine. She's also a trailblazer and happens to be the first openly transgender federal official
Chevy
to be
trailblazer?
confirmed by the U.S. Senate. Dr. Levine, we appreciate you making the time to speak with us on this, the first day of Pride Month.
Pride is back.
Do you think states should have a right to ban gender-affirming health care?
I don't think any state or anybody should have the right to do that. As a moral question and as a legal question. I just think it's wrong. To everyone celebrating Transgender Day of Visibility, I want you to know that your president sees you. And we're committed to advancing transgender equality in the classroom, on the playing field, at work, in our military, in our housing and healthcare systems, everywhere, simply everywhere.
So today, I am directing my state agencies to take action to protect and support the rights of Minnesota's LGBTQIA plus community.
And here's the thing, millennial men, they saw all these sob stories of, oh, wait a second, this gay couple, one's in the death but can't put his partner, his friction partner into his will. Well, that's sad. We should allow that, right? So gay marriage, because we lived an experience where it didn't exist, and then we saw it come into existence. But now you have young Gen Z men who are going, all right, okay, I guess someone's trans, and then they're hearing people like Walz, people like Kamala Harris, and they're going, wait a second. You don't believe that I should be able to tell my children to not do that? And they point to the narcissistic sociopath tranny in their class. Going, wait a second. So I'm not going to have parental rights? So it's because of their lived experience, and the lie can no longer be sold.
Yeah. Well, they're losing rights along the way, right? I think, just like you said, we were like, all right, fine, the friction partner thing, you want some rights that maybe you don't have. Okay, fine. I don't even agree with that, but whatever. I'm not so worried
Civil
about that.
unions, sure.
Now it's like, I can't say that that's a guy. It looks like a guy. I didn't know it was a girl, or vice versa. I didn't know it was a she that turned into I didn't know that. Now you're getting in trouble for that. Now you're being ostracized for that. Now you're the piece of crap in the classroom just because you're a white guy.
Yeah. Well, we were sold a lie that, George, aside from the Patriot Act, that the Republican Party wanted control over every aspect of your life, right? Stay out of our bedroom.
Yeah.
And so you saw an entire generation vote in the savior, Barack Obama. And now you've seen more overwhelming control from the Democrat Party, where they control everything from your future prospects, affirmative action, DEI, to your language, hate speech laws. And so young people now are not saying, hey, what happens if I vote in the cool Democrats? They're going, I've lived under it.
Yeah.
And I have less freedom than my parents. And they're rejecting it. And they also, I think, see some value in tradition. This also goes to point number 2. I came up under Andrew Breitbart, and he said that everything was downstream from culture. Right? Politics is downstream from culture. That's why Barack Obama required the media entertainment industrial complex. Yeah. And it hasn't worked. To give you a good example, Brian Stelter. Right now, he's on CNN. Brian Stelter was one of the people spearheading the smear campaign against Joe Rogan, right? And ivermectin.
It's a dull spear.
He actually thought he was going to win because he thought, hey, we're the legacy media, right? We have all of these institutions. We have an army. It's just one guy. They didn't realize just how resoundingly they've been rejected. Brian Stelter, right now, super straight on CNN. That just shows you what we're dealing with. Young people.
Come on, come on, Tim. Help me out here. We got Stelter on there, and we can't play. Yes!
I thought you were wanting to put him on TV. On the show.
Okay. And he thought he was going to exterminate Joe Rogan's career, which again brings us back to this point number 2 is pop culture. The media, TV, Hollywood, they have saturated everything with far left, quote unquote, woke content. This has been the default where Gen Z men have grown up with this. It has been so ubiquitous that they had to go to alternatives to see anything else. The difference is now alternatives have been available. It wasn't available in the past. Because you're going to sit down, you're going to take it, and that's it. You're going to watch what we give you. Let me give you a very prime example of this is like Pedro Pascal, who's now in everything.
Literally.
This is a man who is a self-avowed socialist. This is a man who was vocally pro-trans, famously wore the COVID mask that said science is real, Black Lives Matter, love is love, and no human is illegal.
That's a big mask.
And it's just none of those slogans on their face even make sense, even just in isolation. No human is illegal. What? Of course someone can. Well, are they out in society when they're supposed to be in jail? Did they break out? Are they in a country where they're not supposed to be? Love is love? Well, hold on a second. What about animals? What about age of consent?
Pedophilia.
Black Lives Matter? I mean, sure, no one's saying that they don't. Science is real. Well, no one's questioning the scientific method. Do you mean the dogmatic cult of modern? He just encapsulates everything that is wrong and smug about Hollywood. He's actually taken that title from George Clooney. He comes from a long line of Chilean socialists, which is the reason for Pinochet, by the way. Helicopter ride might not have been the worst idea. He supported openly the Chilean socialist candidate in 2021, saying, I'm a child of socialist political refugees. We are very, 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 very liberal. And this video from The Last of Us set, I guess, isn't helping. This is the kind of thing that young men are saying, I don't want to be with that.
Freak.
And I don't even know what that is.
It's definitely not a guy who would survive an apocalypse.
No, it's definitely not.
He wouldn't even survive an analopolis.
No.
I didn't even get that.
If he had to do time in prison, they would just show that video to play. Oh, we're going to have fun with you. So, and here's the thing. When we grew up, you had plenty of female characters, and you had plenty of male characters, and you had plenty of white characters and black characters. I mean, if you were to look at the top shows, when we grew up, we've talked about this. Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, Urkel was a big one. You look at Will Smith, you look at Denzel Washington, athletes, Michael Jordan, Mike Tyson, Michael Jackson. I get it, it's not lost. I mean, that's kind of a half point, but you understand. You had women. If you go to Fresh Prince, you had the sisters, and there were storylines that surrounded around them. You had Sarah Connor.
Still,
you had Alien growing up with Sigourney Weaver. Now, they weren't all action heroes. If you look at the Breakfast Club, it was partially women, it was partially guys. You look at 16 Candles, you look at Home Alone, you had Macaulay Culkin, but the mom was primarily the main character. In other words, it was pretty balanced. You may say that it wasn't, but it was, and it wasn't something that we all had to think about at all times and have all content be dictated to us by committee. And so when you look at where we are now, you see the gender swaps and the racial swaps. You've now made people aware of something that maybe they didn't even have a problem with before. So you look at Ghostbusters, sucked. You look at Ocean's 8, sucked. Indiana Jones, Star Wars, pretty much all of Marvel.
And the problem with those isn't that they're female characters or they're gay characters or whatever. The problem with those is that they're replacing.
Yes.
That there was something.
Right.
And then they're like, oh, well, we need to make a different version of this.
Right.
No. We were fine when it was just female characters, black characters, Asian characters, gay characters, whatever it is. If it's an original thing, that it didn't bother anybody. But it's when you're saying, oh, what we had before was you, and you're not good enough, we're going to replace it with something else.
No one was demanding that George Clooney played Malcolm X in the biopic.
Yeah.
It's true.
We were okay with it.
I would like to see it.
No one was demanding George Clooney play Malcolm X in the biopic, just like no one was demanding that King Louis be played by Idris Elba. And by the way, we were completely fine with Will Smith being the single highest paid action hero of the decade.
Still fine with it.
All of those were fine.
I was going to every one of them. I was like, he's in another movie.
Every single one of them we had.
And Denzel Washington.
Yeah.
No one had a problem with it until you just started telling us that we need to correct something that didn't need to be corrected. By the way, this is also not because they're trying to make something, as far as Hollywood, representative of our society. They are trying to mold society. Just look at the overrepresentation of LGBTQAIP couples. So they make up at least 9% of regularly occurring characters on TV shows. That's a 13 times increase, despite the fact that they make up anywhere from 2 to 5% of the population. You can find some numbers in recent years as high as 15 to 20% of on-air couples.
And they often feel forced.
Yes, they very much
They often feel forced, and they force love scenes, and you're like, what? If you're looking at the dialogue of the movie, you're like, doesn't even make sense. They just wanted to put a gay scene in here.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Is Disney especially is renowned for shoehorning. They love to take something that doesn't belong and just shove it in there and make it happen. That's
both true literally and, I guess, metaphorically as well. So.
Well, this brings us to the next point. I guess this is point 3 or point 4 with young Gen Z men. It's pretty hard to blame people, men, namely white men, but Hispanic men are throwing their lot in there because you're not promising them a bunch of freebies either, assuming they're here legally. It's pretty hard to blame them for all of society's ills and tell them that there's nothing they can actually do to correct it, short of lowering their own quality of life without them rejecting it. It's the constant vilification of masculinity. And we see this trend on the left. Look, this is not hyperbole. They pretty much have, for the last decade and a half, blamed men exclusively for everything wrong.
I mean, this is a serious crisis, the state of men, hypermasculinity, man up, be a man. I mean, what is going on in this space?
What about moral courage?
Is that new?
What about social courage, which is to say speaking up in the face of, abuse, whether it's your friends of yours making derogatory comments or online spaces where guys are being really disrespectful to girls,
men already
or women,
did,
and calling them out and saying, hey, that's not cool.
There's too much of toxicity. It's masculine toxicity out there.
Another.
We've kind of
confused
looks
like he huffs paint.
What it means to be a man.
So what the hell are you waiting for? Because if it's the woman thing, it's time to get over that. It's time for hope, for change. It's time to be a man and vote for a woman.
We know that the silent majority of white men aren't actually MAGA supporters.
I'm a 56-year-old gun-owning white guy. Kamala Harris thinks I'll vote for her. She's right.
Hey, white dudes. So I think we're all pretty sick of hearing how much we suck. Every time you go online, it's the same story. We're the problem. And yeah, some white dudes are. Trump and all his MAGA buddies are out there making it worse, shouting nonsense in their stupid red hats and acting like they speak for us when they don't.
I feel like really bummed that the right wing is like really dooming a lot of trying to doom a lot of little boys into unhappiness and like conditioning a lot of men into loneliness.
Right. So let's go with that for a second. It's like, yeah, some white dudes do suck. Those are just Trump voters, but they don't represent the rest of us. Okay, so young white men go, all right, what do you got? Sit down, shut up, silence is violence, check your privilege, LGBTQAIP, be an ally, and be a man, vote for a woman.
We're also tired of being the only people you can say that about.
Yeah.
You're not going to see a commercial, it's like, bow, now, now, some black dudes suck.
Yeah, I mean,
and then just show a montage we showed earlier.
Yeah.
Like, it's frustrating to be like, why you keep, you browbeating. You say it all the time. You're browbeating us. Fucking knock it off.
Look at this chick. Bet she can't do pull-ups. And it's just like the left can't help themselves because they have no answers. Like, we're not saying all white men. We're not saying all young men. Oh, okay, good. So how can I be a man of whom you approve? Well, you just have to start by hating yourself. You have to start by hating yourself. And you have to start by taking it. Ugh. You have to say, believe all women. Oh, hold on a second. I'm a young man. I know some women. I wouldn't believe all of them. Well, then you're not. Well, then you're part of the problem. Well, hold on a second. I do think, I am a young man. I do think that Black Lives Matter. Of course I do. But I also think that all lives matter. Well, sorry, you can't be included among us. You're one of those Trump people. Well, hold on a second. I am a young man. And I do believe that you should be free to love who you want. But I also see some value in the nuclear family and rearing of children. Well, no, then you're not. Well, hold on a second. I am a young man, okay? I don't want to be one of the bad ones, but I do believe that men and women are inherently different and we probably excel in different roles. Well, then you just can't be among us. They cannot fix it. And I mean, just proof positive of this is look at their vice chair, the DNC, David Hogg, who, by the way, just recently in a PR attempt, swapped brains with an actual man in the latest documentary. Yeah. And that's just, look, I don't want to see it. I don't want to see it.
What a man wants, what a man needs.
David Hogg has no idea.
The answer is boobs.
Yes.
That's all it is. It's like, it's
wants,
a super
needs,
quick song.
I'm not a boob guy.
And we are seeing the divide with young men and young women. That is true. Young women are still voting overwhelmingly liberal, but that's true across pretty much all generations. And here's the thing. If you want to, I think what Republicans, what conservatives need to do, because for so long I've been saying we have to go after the black vote, we have to go after. There was pretty much no effort. You'd be hard pressed to find someone who can say that there was a really concerted effort to win young Hispanic men this last election from Republicans, and certainly not enough to counteract the rhetoric of, hey, we need to get rid of illegal aliens, and the Democrats saying that means all brown people, right? And they overwhelmingly naturally veered towards Trump and Why? Because of masculinity, because they respect the masculinity. They respect the unapologetic, okay, we are going to do the right thing in spite of it being unpopular, for example. You can say what you want. It wasn't popular when Donald Trump said they're not sending their best and brightest. Back then, that was basically like a calling for another Reich. Right? And they naturally, even look with young black men, they tend to vote as a monolith because of NGOs and because of lobbyists and because of affirmative action. They tend to vote overwhelmingly Democrat, but young black men veered significantly more conservative without being pandered to. I don't think the answer for conservatives is to go, okay, we have young men now, or young white and Hispanic men. Now we need to bring in another group. No, I think you need to keep doing this. Keep doing what you're doing. Solidify that because people will naturally gravitate toward it. For women, probably not. Women who are married become much more conservative. Women who have children become much more conservative. Single women, whether they are 20 or 50, vote Democrat, statistically. If they are single, usually miserable, let's be honest, they vote Democrat. So the key here is to continue encouraging the family unit, to continue creating and fostering a culture of, hey, you know what? You missed the American dream post-World War II, right? Our greatest era. Well, a big part of that was the family unit. A big part of the American dream was working hard and being okay with maybe a single income household. A return to traditionalism. You create and you foster that environment. You'll continue to win young men. And as women get absorbed into those units, which they find out are actually better for them than the lie of becoming a boss girl, they'll become more conservative. It's still a tough nut to crack. But we see what happens returning Roe v. Wade, returning abortion to the states. Hey, you might as well say Hail Hitler, according to a lot of young single women out there. Hey, Hobby Lobby providing 16 out of 21 forms of birth control to their employees. It still wasn't enough. You can't get through this or solve it by pandering. There's momentum with young men.
Yeah.
By the way, of all races. Continue with that, and if you create a strong foundation for a society, people will see it and they'll become more conservative. Don't do the whole, how do we get the black vote? How do we get the Hispanic vote? How do we get the female vote? Do what you're doing because we know the results will speak for themselves. And people right now are opening their eyes to the lie, especially after COVID, especially after George Floyd, the summer of love, especially after everything that the 2020 election. This is something that you couldn't have created in a lab or with a Frank Luntz focus group and his toupee and silly little sneakers, where you say, hey, how do we reach? This reaches people. We have never seen young men, like we're seeing now with Gen Z men, overwhelmingly move to my right, your left. We can kind of only expect that as they get older. And if they're conservative now and you keep your foot on the gas, they're going to stay that way and become more right-leaning. You know why? Because it's the truth. It's what made this country great. That's what Make America Great is, again. Strong families, strong communities. You reap the fruits of your labor and you become a good citizen. And we follow rule of law. That's the message. It appeals to everyone. Do it and don't tiptoe. Fat vagina is exactly what I would say if I wasn't here on YouTube. So go and subscribe on Rumble. Same channel where free speech is actually alive and well. Or you can stay here and the